Hey everyone, James from TeaDB here, bringing you another Inbetweenisode. There are a lot of Inbetweenisodes between episodes these days, so thank you for tuning in to all of these. So today, going to be drinking a Wuyi Oolong tea, but it's a little different than what I normally have. As many of you know, I normally do drink a lot of tea from Wuyi origin, especially when it comes to my rock tea, Wuyi Oolong Yancha, whatever you want to call it. But today I am drinking a tea from actually Three Bears Tea, a new vendor brought on their Lubao not so long ago. So when I ordered a bunch of samples, I also noticed that they had three teas actually. I only ordered samples of two of them, but three teas in one of my sort of favorite, I don't know if you want to call it a subcategory or subcategories, and that is Wuyi Oolong. That is about 10 years or so of age. And some of my absolute favorite sessions ever have come from teas that sort of fit into this interesting category. I don't exactly call it an aged oolong per se in the same way that, like, I don't know, a 25 to 30-year-old tea is, but the age does some stuff, especially in terms of like reducing the roast and bringing out a lot of complexity that I think is really, really interesting and has definitely had some of my, I don't know, just some of my favorite absolute brews. Some of the most memorable ones are definitely teas I've got from Origin Tea back when they were in business, and that was, 7 years ago at this point. And they had some really, really good Wuyi Oolongs that were kind of in that 2003 to 2005, 2006 range. And the source material was obviously very good too, but I also just really like the way that roast had sort of mellowed out and integrated into the overall flavors. So when I saw that Three Bears Tea was offering some of these teas, I was excited to try them out. Another important thing for this also that I would note is that Three Bears Tea, the ones that they're selling, are not re-roasted. That's the same for the ones that I tried from Origin Tea. I think that's probably a pretty important fact. If you're going to re-roast the tea every 3 or 4 years, it's just going to have a much more flavor profile closer to kind of like a roasted oolong that's a couple of years old, rather than one that has been unroasted in 10 years or so. So yeah, definitely a category worth checking out if you can find it. It's just like Lubao teas, which Three Bears Tea is also selling. It's not a category or a subcategory or subcategory, whatever you want to call it, that necessarily gets a lot of coverage. So yeah, let's move on to the tea. So unlike normal episodes, I have not pre-made the tea here. I did just preheat this, and this water is just freshly boiled, so I'm going to get going on this right now. Talk a little bit about the tea while I do. And the reason why I'm doing it this way is just because I think the aroma and some of these smells that you get from the tea are a bit more of a big factor of enjoyment when it comes to Wuyi Oolong compared with something like Pu'er or something where, you know, the aroma and stuff are nice, but they're going to stay a little more constant, so you have more time to really enjoy them. Really, really rich aromatic aroma. Love it. So this is the rinse. One other adjustment I'm doing is I normally just pour directly into my cup, but because this is an episode and I want to be drinking this rather than sipping really sort of timidly, I want to be able to just drink this in a relatively expedient fashion. So this video is not like 45 minutes of like 4 steeps of tea. I have not tested that video idea out, but I suspect people are not going to be into 40 minutes of mainly just sitting and contemplatively drinking. Maybe some people are. I don't know if I'd be into making that video either. Okay, so a little bit about this tea. This tea is a 2008 Yanzhong Lan Wuyi Oolong. And the other one I sampled is the Laokong Shuixian, which a lot of people should be familiar, just Old Bush Shuixian. And I tried them both, And I suspected I was going to bring on the Shuishan because that's like a bit more of a standard. It's a heavier roast and stuff like that. And this tea, Jason, who runs Three Bears Tea, described it as sort of a lighter roast. So interesting to see how it ages. And so I suspected I was going to like the heavier roast more. But I was actually a little surprised in the sense that I actually really, really like the lighter roast tea. That was interesting to me. It cut a little bit against what I thought was going to be my own preference. So I'm excited to bring it on. The Shuishan had more of a classical profile. You could still really taste those minerals and rocks really up front. Whereas this tea had a lot more complexity, a lot of more like higher notes, floral things going on. So kind of interesting. So light roast versus like medium to heavy, I believe. So again, really sweet, complex aroma. Changed even a bit from just that rinse to here. A lot of floral notes, maybe some fruity ones as well. Cheers. So even saying that the Shuishan has more of those classical tastes, you can definitely still taste that this is a Wuyi Oolong. Sort of leads with those minerals and kind of like characteristic classical Wuyi Oolong flavors. And I'm using a fair amount of leaf here. I'm using almost 6 grams for about 75 milliliters. So it's a fair amount of leaf to water ratio. Definitely something I recommend for Wuyi teas if you're going to brew it this way. I think it's even acceptable to go a little higher or a little lower, depending on your own preference. Really rich, really strong, really good body, really robust, nice texture to this. It has a lot of those strong, just really coating the mouth and sweetness. Starting to notice the aftertaste as well. I just really like this tea. I'm probably only going to do a few steeps on camera because I also want to sort of savor this tea and drink it a little more slowly. But I'll do a couple more on here too. The aftertaste of this tea is something I also really noted in my initial session of it. Definitely like a really long, the sort of aftertaste that I really, really like. A lot of depth to it as well. Good mixture of just like robust, strong flavors and sweetness. I think if I used a little bit less leaf to water, probably get a little more sweetness to it at the expense of maybe like losing out on a little bit on some of those like classical Wuyi flavors, charcoal and stuff. Not charcoal, minerals, rock taste. So again, gonna be brewing into here and then there. Ordinarily, I would go straight into the cup. I would also probably brew this in a pot if I did have a Wuyi Oolong pot, but I do not, so I am not doing so. So a little fruitier in the aroma maybe. Still brewing a really nice red color here. Cheers. Let that cool for just a little bit. Yeah, and Wuyi Oolongs, for those that don't drink it much, definitely one that I recommend smelling as often as you can. It smells great. It fills up this tea room with just wonderful aromas. Yeah, really tasty. Actually, pretty similar to the initial brew. How does this differ from a younger Wuyi Oolong? Well, that's a very good question. And probably the best way to go about it is to actually just try these teas. I assume that most people have had experiences at this point with younger Yancha, but definitely get both of those experiences. This tea, and I can only talk about the individual teas sort of in front of me. I will say this tea has an aftertaste that is definitely really, really good. And the texture and the aftertaste and the way it integrates, I'd say, is like amongst some of the very best Wuyi Oolong I've had recently. And 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 the other thing that's pretty obvious is the way that the roast mellows down. Some people really like to have that roasty flavor. For me personally, I like it to be a little bit more mellowed out. So when I do buy like a Lao Kong Shui Shan from like Cindy or someone at Wuyi Origin, I'll usually prefer to let it rest for a few years, 2 or 3 years before drinking it. Something like a Rogue might be a little bit more drinkable on average, a little sooner. But I like the roast to be little mellowed out. So aging this tea for another, for let's say 10 years, mellows that roast out even more. And so what happens is I feel like the flavors just, it's just even more complex in the sense that the roast mellows and it brings out some of these other flavors to the forefront too. These have been stored quite well. I think Jason has stored them for a long time, so they've been kept quite dry. What you would always be worried about, and I think Fujian, where Wuyi Oolong is grown, is a relatively humid place, so if a tea was stored there for a while, you'd certainly be worried about it picking up some moisture along the way, and that would sort of create sort of a sourness or a tanginess to it. And, you know, that can be okay in the right context, but you don't want it to be overly so. And I definitely think that is one thing that can go wrong with aging oolongs, with like actually 25 to 30-year-old aged oolongs, as well as just something that's even 5 years or 10 years old, is if it does pick up too much humidity, you can get sort of this sour profile that I don't think is that great. Anyways, going to keep drinking. So definitely more in that sort of fruit category here. Sort of has that kind of acidity that you'd expect from that. But then it's followed up with this like really nice sweetness. So if you're someone that likes to get more of a sweeter brew, definitely use a little bit less leaf to water or go a little bit less intense than me. The session is strong. And my mouth is totally coated after just 2 steeps of this. So yeah, I think I might just do those 2 and then enjoy this tea throughout the rest of the day. So yeah, thank you, Jason, for sourcing this tea. I think it's really nice, and I think it brings something unique and different to the table in the Western market. So hope everyone can go out and try this tea if it is still available. As of the filming of this on January 1st, 2021, it is available. So yeah. Do it, check it out, compare it with the other 2 Wuyi Oolongs that Jason has that are aged. Compare it with young Wuyi Oolongs too. See what you see are the differences. So yeah, comment below. Let me know if you've ever tried Wuyi Oolong tea that's around 10 years old, or if you've tried Wuyi Oolong around 5 years old. Definitely an experience I recommend seeking out. So thank you all for tuning in. I will see you all next time.